Toma numberlege soundulya. Langa do the simji shuai.
First of all, I would like to wish you all good morning.
Dadi chelia, dadi in chelia, and the Kuryu dan Jeve Golia, that gives her this share, and the issue delia towards the sha, the disease.
So this morning I will speak for a bit about the topic of the environment, and following that we will have some question and answer.
That's dangi da kuyugi nerendi and durum yuzajibe nange as a draw immediately a cheshimbe da gange to us and down da gange chishuruchi chadi ore.
The issue of the environment is an issue or a difficulty that we humans in the 21st century are now confronting.
And the Hindus are a kisindi Nazugi the Nedundi Nazuji Todam Summer Yawache Motovimina and Maumbalia that disaster summer that's a kanda Jigwachimojuak, the Jiggy Buruchak, the Yangistar Udivici, Mazuda, and Mazu Mirjema. Indeed, the
and if we do not deal with this issue properly, if we don't take enough interest or if we don't do it right, then it is a situation that will make us and the next generations in the future all fall into a situation of disaster. It'll give us great difficulties.
Mashi Kashur Tatisa Kuyuki Tayimbi Nang Azuki Numjune Tuzu Kashur to the Nega Mambusi Goblia Nedunji Karion the Orsana Karion the Orsana Zodi Kashur. 딱 아주 세리베 토하네. 다 심주 망부 체세. 지 measurement 지 체를 cap 에너지 다네지 장가로 좀 마. 아주에다지 안다로 좀 마. 된세. 체 caption information 지시해야 되디. 시라랑지 미기 셈리야 교와 동야리야 아니 시라랑지 가주래. 다 노리나 스머베 만당만지 디디지 니주 지 파시차디야래 라바도 비데기 인포메이션 마체디 지 레베나로래야 냐데아지마도베 다 딩문에 네기 심기 다 닝 세나다도 셈토리아 바 셈토리지 냠렌샤 digitally gua transform the information de ba symptom nyam ne jila gua ra ya gua machine ba do ane information jibugi da pegi me ba ji ne ji cha de ya
But in most times and in most situations, the situation that happens is that primarily The scientists have done a lot of research. They have taken a lot of measurements, and they present us a lot of information, a lot of numbers and information. So we have all the information, but we're in a situation where this is not enough to really change people's minds and people's thinking. In particular, we keep the information in our brains, and it never really reaches our hearts or our minds. And so it's unable to transform us so that we will be able to really put this into practice within our minds. And so until we are able to let that information change our thinking and change our minds, then the information itself or alone will not help.
secret seminar that Tamatia. A Tamatia go the Jibur Chadia. The Tamatia give. Ton Daji, Pazi, Yonjaki, Vezi, Kanda Tamadi, Ningasavi Indivici, so with the time New Year, Chita Yonja Chadia. And then Tana to Tamad Gam Gitolia, Gamjung. He told it that Yanga Yevik, the Jake Daji, Yandaros, Tisi. You ever read it? The dig and June to Negatachi. Yanzi Tamamiti and Juan Jualia and a Kashweda. Tesm Sigi Takadaji, Tamamiti and can't watch it as you go, Mare. That is G. That is the Yangatia Koran, Yandatia Koran, and the company is Koran that responsible someone that she gained with Kurmoya, irresponsible Rusi, irresponsible Rusi, Deji sort of charge. Gain Kurmoya, Tepsi Rusi, Chamada, Deji, Unachanegi. That's what I see. Milia Piano, she started on the tell the days and meet the company grants with the dress we say. Tagan that tender is Charlie order. Jeza and design to Zulia as we see Kuryuki. That is Seri with the Sudan. Energy Chulu, the woody Pinzu Jilia. Kashurga Jebachi Nyamdo Liacha, the case Resana and Siri big tone needs information share. Spirituals and another Semtolia, but she loves it going this Shidusana and the thing is Sunju tone Liachavi Mina Energy Kulia, Nubatember game. You are Drosaresa. Did you some donye? Siri Badam, Dana Shinki Carla Daji Lingu as a lingu pingy. That's the one we on it.
This is an example to illustrate this is one that I'm sure everyone knows. We all know that smoking cigarettes is bad for our health. It's well known, everyone knows that it's dangerous, and there are even warning labels on the packets that describe the dangers from this. And so everyone knows that it's dangerous to our health, and yet just knowing this is not enough to motivate people to be able to actually quit smoking cigarettes. So we have the information about the cigarettes, and yet people who smoke are unable to change. And in fact, with the warning labels on the packets, it's like putting those warning labels on the packets. The company it's as if the company has, now that the company has placed the warning labels there, they don't need to take any further responsibility. And so the warning labels don't actually do anything. They just let the company not take any more responsibility for getting people to quit smoking. And so this is not a situation that actually ends up benefiting anyone. It's really for the company's own aims. And so it is similar to that these days with the environment. It's important now that the scientists and religious leaders all work together, that they collaborate and work together. Science is able to give us the information, and the religious leaders are able to give us the advice and the spiritual direction for our heart. And if they two work together, then we will be able to confront the environmental change. And this is something that many scientists and many environmental activists describe.
팅두기 아니 차게에서는 장도 야나 야게 남바든지 간 요마래 나는 신기야 후유 상마샤에 비체 아니 정중르시 근데 인두산디 규센데네 나는 신기 그 너르기 수균기 되지 정중감다 다지 튠부여봐 된제기 지 소화래야 그냥 그거 조세 충분해 이 균셀데네 에너지 셈리야 정중감다지 미버로 제바디 다지 탐습 유여지당 디버로 기타 가르쳐다지 자와당 다가는 신기 정중감리야 아주 그걸 지구르치야 다들 이제 돌아야 바샤 조세를 샤투요 알았어.
Personally, for myself, from the time I was born until I was 7 years old, I lived in my own home country, my own homeland. And at that time, my homeland was a place where there were really no modern conveniences or no modern development. It was a place where the environment was clean and natural, and where people continued to live in the traditional lifestyle in a way that was harmonious with the natural environment. And so I had a short opportunity to live that lifestyle. And because of that, I think that this created an impression or an imprint in me that I was able to see the connection between humans and the natural environment, and how important it is to have the commitment and to have affection for this. I think this created the imprints for me to really respect the environment.
제자한테 지금 대별로 가시에 나올래야 지 구유도리야 계시하다 안에 가수래 구요도래야 계시하다 안에 지 랭귀비아로 이제 가시에 충분해 덜로킹 버르지다 다들 봐도 지 덜로킹 버르지 아버지 용면도 되다 이면에도 좀 고추체 다들 봐도 로카시 로디야.
And so for the last few years, I've had the chance to speak about the environment and to encourage people to take to practice environmental awareness. Up to this point, it hasn't really, I haven't really fulfilled all my wishes, but for the last few years, I've begun this.
다들 초스kem 다들 마신다 다 너나 간절하다 긴상게 지 총계에 나올래야 차론 준비하게 아니 미망부지 정중 구유사데 탄 rubuta 차디 야래 라바르도 너니가 아메리카 주두사네 아주 대 라브시머지 나올래 아주 구유 거래야 this 계절부지 수르도 민유유지는 계절부지 아주 제가 누구쯤 둘이 시도사네 아주 드라미다를 주 구유 대배 타른도진도 조도스 타나지 정중 구유된 제외기지 민식 대주 배주다 앞에나 대 탭 나로라 디상 탭 디주 나로라 런주 쿠유든 제비 민식 배주 당하듯이 요르뇨 주도스 요르뇨 주도스 코란주 다제 셴주스 참점 아주지 미카 미제 다 파크 서머지 링거 공연 우리나 친체 안지 런중 쿠유 서마다 다 통계나 런중 쿠유 서나 파크 주로다 야 런중 쿠유 서다지 미수에 잡듯이 그래서 디나로래야 직치네 야마 친들의 제비네 야 미기 섬컴리야 섬컴기 대당 서머네 섬기 대당리야 아니 펜도 용되도스但이는 간다지 로미데 타른도린도 친체 다는 민식들 배주 동안되게 대구난 배주 동안에 닝용을 용주된도스 대지 취재된 제가 예대봐 진짜기 민식들이 배주 동안 마로만 용된도스 진짜 신이를 좋소.
But these days, city dwellers are getting further and further away from the natural environment. Last year in America, I went to speak at a university, and on the side we had a discussion about the environment. It was a small discussion, there were just a few people, but in this small colloquium on the environment, we did discuss this. And what people said is that people and the natural environment are going further and further apart. In fact, they've investigated that if you look to see how many words that are related to the natural environment are used in books and so forth, the number of words that are used, people are using words related to the natural environment less and less. And so they have investigated and they speak and they look, and so when they investigate or research this, they see that when people go to parks, go to the natural environment, because in a city the only natural environment you have are the parks that people make. When people go to these parks, then they see that this is actually very helpful for them mentally. It's helpful for their mental ease and very beneficial for them. But these days, people use fewer and fewer words that are related to the natural environment, and instead people are using more and more words that are related to technology.
다들 댕에 해야 돼. 지 쿠유랑 것도 지 가서디 디토다 망부시다 샤스케면 가르잖아. 나랑 디토래야지. 미세 장바체샤버 개요만해. 다이네 당기 공도 쉬는 시들에. 대중 유아 동아리아 롭종 체샤버당. 에네더지 information summary 딱 간다 지 니즈 하고 지분 증명도스 다대지 sembe 꿀롱래야 지 요아 좋아하대 지 꾸네 랑데 summary 딱 간다 지 수수익이 수수익이 셈도 안에 꾸네 랑외 토네 아니 요아 좋아하대 계속 차리도 가르잖아 다디 쿠유데 아주기 촛업 섬으로 livelihood 섬으로 다지 生活方式什么大点这个用的个啊现在地军生的呢地主主要的呀安吉古罗的呀主么亲吧都主要的看熟悉啥的都是
So actually, today I really don't have.
不是因为跟生活方式有关生活方式，穿着肉都是。
So. So really today I haven't all that much to actually say, particularly about specifically how to protect the environment. The reason for this is that I'm not very well versed in that. I haven't studied it thoroughly. But it's as I mentioned before. In order to change the environment, just studying and having information, just understanding the situation is not enough. we need to change our motivation in our minds. We need to motivate. We need to put ourselves into motion within our minds, and it is important to motivate us mentally to take on environmental issues. And the reason for this is that the environment is really intimately connected with our livelihood. And in order to change our livelihood in the environment, then it'll be difficult to change that without first changing the motivations we have in our minds.
다 조디 가서에 두신 초시 사례때 계시버지 돈이 와래 내가 좀 초시 다 디나는 게 아니 초시 사디 계시를 좀 사디 와래.
And so the main thing is that we have to have a sense of a contentment and limiting our greed. Between these two, being content or knowing how much we need is enough, or being satisfied with what we have is enough.
Daba chungwa la dustan da di chozin daba chungwa se zan yaji daba chungwa se tser shaurwa ka gazi jil daba chungwa res. Da di yantis kala khabar shurwa da di ji diga chenan daba chungwa re diga chenan daba cheres shegu dustan yandi tsedi kala khabar shurwa. Yan dagana singi daba chungwa sa di ko daba chungwa re ma do yan daba mevrji minzang daba chungwa se dusan dizi gyönrüji yonde da tsikde dizi gyönrüji daba chungwa da dre indusane da dre dan donang an zu tingsang ji constraint ji dre cheje really da jin zambulingi de chulunru de consumerism 드레르 차례하래 이지제제 드레 유산단 드레 두즈리아 나주지 다 나조로 고야 가림바 뇌바 가림바 운에 고야 가림바 진득이 개바 치료만해 다 이내 나조로 운에는 고야디 뉴뉴지마도 요 말해 이내 나조 다 데베왕도 이제 데바가 상물론 되고요. 너 고야디 뉴즈 봐도요 말에. 라바동 아란주기 점블링디 딱 간다지 정중기 다 resources 말에. 다 디디 배주다 상물로 정중 resource 다 내용이 알아. 다 디 치슈여버지 차대요. 디사 서비스 알아. 아주 미인되바디 치다学生 새 콜런드베 숨쉬지네 가르쳐야지 라키스 말했다 당사 말했어 제자 디균선 때네 치시 예배지 정중기 리소스티 치시 매배 미인되바 칸토야디 갈라하고 싶차대요 제자 디규제 때는 단 레바티 수수배 컨트롤 체제 드레셔와디 다지 초셔버 제와디 다 개점십 차대 아래서 정도.
So when we talk about these two, contentment and having few desires, and you're saying having few desires, and that's like it's difficult to set a limit. What does it mean to say that we have fewer desires or less greed? This is more, how do we know what is more desires and how do we know what is less desires? And so it's difficult to set the level for what it is. And even when we talk about having few desires or less desires, few desires is not no desires, and so even then there's a difficulty, just a terminological difficulty with it. But basically, in the world, what's happened is our world religion has become consumerism. This is what everyone believes at these days. And so at this particular time, what is most important is that we are able to discriminate between what it is that we need and what it is that what we want. So what is it that we actually need? We need to determine what that is. What we actually need is only a little bit. but we want everything. We only need, even though we only actually need a little bit. And in particular, in the world, the natural resources in the world are what we use to support, to gain what we need and want, and these are limited. As many scientists have explained, at a time where everyone has great greed and great desires, we could have 3 or 4 planet Earths, and it still would not be enough resources to satisfy all the human desires. So we have the natural environment, natural resources that are limited, and human desires and greed that are unlimited, and these two are out of balance. And so it is important that we learn how to control our desires, and this is why contentment is so important.
나들이 뉴스안에 가르라 다리 나주에 따지 초화대 지 초시버르지 시샤토네 시저르디 초시버르디 네 삼바 시샤토네 다간들 가주에 나마 이제 시안 마찬가지로 기억하겠습니다. 다들이 다지단기 지 구유 순급 뭐스베 랭귀 지 레가샤지 수수기 미진나로 니리기 미진나로라 다가다 구유 순급 사야데 나도 니머리기 미지기 나로래야 레가 가르치기 봐. 대단 태간 저번용돼야 지기 니주 차려래. 마도베 참조지 구유기 화래 랭귀를 배 demonstration of chair and 다나신 총도로 쳐 대대 체대 니마 가시지 체대 집이 팽겨 많아요. 대만 인비 뒤주디 상물로야. 아주다 남균기 소외 트레일 가르치디 여버들이야. 삼동과 아직 개심시 차대요. 알아서 정도.
So we need to think about environmental protection, how we can bring this into our daily lives. We need to think about what it is we can do in our daily lives that would be connected to protecting the environment, have a direct effect on protecting the environment. Being an environmental activist, going to demonstrations or meetings or speaking about it alone is not going to help. So we have to do other things as well. We have to see how it is we can use our daily lives to deal with the issue in our daily life, and this is important to think about.
다변은 디나네 집변은 마르반 가르경차디 다디상 양지 구류 순교기 다지 자주 개심일직 제 바지샤리 유스레.
And especially giving up eating meat and practicing a vegetarianism is one of the most important things we can do to protect the environment.
다이네 녜디 지가루에 마르반 가경차디 걸 우망에 계지지 능에 운에트네지 officially 다베 용라르지 차찌마도 신용 셰요 말해 차찌 셰야데 급디두사네 오늘은 당보다 안데 신연 되버르시라메 단 되버시라메서네 다지 컨데스 라워다디 당보 오늘 셰비 쳔시디 급디두사네 다 말람 걸르제 말람 티니슈 아니 니슈 접시래 니슈 접시 니기르다 니슈 접시 저인로 다야 뭐 정문도 급디두사네 당보 셰비나 몰람 니마 당보 될래야 아니지 캡라다지 안드리지 마르방카 쳐고도스 다 될래야 지수수 당과 예베체네 니마지 나라라 칼라지 다지 마르 메베 칼라지 당과차 다지 나공 칼라지 마르메 서미사 당과차 야 둔자 지기 나로 니마지 서금 말 서금 민사 당가차 대라서 바다간다지 당고를 망부 싶으셔야지 에너지 다 라바교 쇼스 다 베나 니마지 나로래야 칼라 팅지디 에네 말 서금 민사 라바교 쇼스 안 둔자 지기 나로 니마지 말 서금 민사 라바교 쇼스 근데지 최시로 근데 수야로 당고 다이네 디 니마 당보들이 셰아들이 중마서 저번에 다 주마서 다 타마타마들에 니마 타마들이야 아니 고주디 까르경 초바산데 아래 페베나로래 지 까르경 캡라 당인데 까르세 사로치 캡라 당인 초바쳐 근데 지 딱 결혼지 셰로치스들라고도 난 가랑 삼루 나로 다지 예, 시안 내가 매번 가르쳐선 다지 가르쳐다. 다들 소소 삼당 거로마도 배 엔다지 예 지그 시에되네. 지 가르쳐. 예 디치인데 맞이 시에되 레버스케면도 삼스. 다이네 니마 타마들이야 당분에 시야 최시에 배치 엔디 토리아 가경의 초보지기 엔지 시로시 라비 인상에 시에래. 기저 시에다. 디도 기저 디제 슈 첨부르지 다지 계제지 시에는 다 슈체세 시야오로 받아 슈체세 시에나 마도데 아니디 가스지 시에샤나 근데 시다란지 펜도시라 이거 말아 다 계제를 슈체세를 시에베 기지래 다이네 텔라테네 지 임팩트 서머베 시라 첨부충 샤 근데 용거를 삼바르 중에 제마서 급디두산에 다 라바경 있으두산 미시지 나로라 샤스르 민생게다 뉴뉴지마도 이게 말했었어 이내 제마 라바경 두산에 아니 미시지 샤스르 민생게 말하지 두다지나 샤팅지마도 가서 팅지 샤스 니마지 샤스르 민생게 뉴르지도 가신 예시랑 고쳐서 가서 지시는 관주지 계제디 추수면도 섬타 예 계제디 야구마고 있어서 참수
But here, in terms of giving up meat and being vegetarian, I've actually only spoken about this really officially only a single time. And actually on that occasion, I didn't really plan to. I didn't actually want to speak about it. The actual plan that I had, I think it was during the 24th Kaju Munlam. I'm not sure which of the Munlams. Anyway, it's one of the Munlams and probably the 24th. And at that time, I had the plan that on the very first day of the Munlam, I would ask people to give up eating meat. But I wasn't saying going to do it for life. I was saying I wanted to find out how many people would be willing to give up to in a single day eat one vegetarian meal. So whether your lunch or your supper, eat one vegetarian meal, or if they're ask people to give up meat for one day per week. I wanted. And then to give people several choices for what they do, whether to eat one vegetarian meal every day or have one vegetarian day a week. That was the initial plan, but I didn't get around to speaking it on the first day, and so I thought about it that whole week of the Munlam. But I didn't feel like speaking about it that day. So on the last day, then there was also a Tibetan animal rights group that asked me, please speak about this issue. And so I thought about it, and I'd already had the plans. I didn't really want to speak about it, but I did. And I thought to myself, because, it's not, the reason I wasn't reluctant was that it felt like if I say, you must do this, you must do that, it just doesn't seem right. It didn't feel right. So at any rate, on the last day of the Munlam, because I'd originally had that plan, and because the animal rights group was asking me about it, I decided to speak about it. And when I spoke about it, I think I was more strident or more strong about it than I'd initially intended to be. Because if you're going to speak about something, then you need to speak about it strongly. And just merely mentioning it didn't seem like it would be enough. And so for that reason, I spoke about it. And even though it wasn't my plan, I planned for it to turn out this way. I spoke about it very strongly. And so I asked, I asked people to raise their hands. I said, how many people would be willing to be vegetarian for the rest of their lives? And I thought only a few people, only a couple of people here and there would raise their hands. But actually, quite a few people raised their hands. I thought more people would raise their hands at saying that they'd only that they give up meat for 1 day a week. I thought, but actually there are fewer people who are asked that. I don't really know the reasons why or understand why this is, but that is how it happened.
Lama Command is long to the Tange and the Shikabre. Karasan Daji Marbanga, the Susul and Java Sogor. Dajidan Sangeda, as a number inza, and the Sangi Sunda, Java Gisogo. That the ne Kajubal Gizzi, Kajube, Lama Command is the Java Gisogo. That the ne Kadu share that when that is Naranda Java University. That is Narangi Benaji, Niegida, Detan, Niegit Seswa and Java University. That is Kishia. Nang yet Seswa and Java University, this Chikashra. That Marban, Munet and Naran Pinky, that mean Yagume. Daine, the Sheshana, there's the Dakatwe, Pendorchi, what is summer of the Chanso. Says that the Gishevre, did you shed you son? That could you command this data? Go to do son of Pelia. Dangonet Negi, that she Obze la Sovada, the Sargeri, the Kombusha Chadiar, Manche Animal Projects, the Muradaji, Social Chumeki, Twenzer Ganga Chadiar. Go to do Sane, Marpan Cardion Sade, Kawashuji Pachadiar. In it go to do San and that go you come to it, Marpan Cardion Chatoria, Daji Shukshambo. Umashta, Labar the Gamma would give Eki. Soon the Zuta Nembushta, the fate and Yenism, that you see. Tina Lorda, Marasana, that could give a means as of Kitcher to Shore. Zema di Geza di Chilora kept Sedusa, and near Shadows. And the Shazano could give a means near Shadows. The Nigelautos, the Kitcher Chosha. And that young Lungdin chair, come up with give us on the Lungdin chair, the Shaza, and that Lungdin chair of data, naked charge, and that the shame down. In a daddy, Marasana could you Taco Casure. In a Chidang around that Marpang Pangbre, Marpang Cajon Chebre, Arangi, Mizina, or those what Chimmy tell you stand. 딱 아람이지 나로랑 오늘 저 된단 데베 차와 다 다다버도지 딘 좀도 삼바르지 게 미세 정면도 된단 미데버지 미세 추수 신데버지 내시 통도 다이네 된단 데베 차와지 인지 땡고 유에슬라비는 다 바지 까르기원 차데 다 데지 수수 로데아버지 이츠버지 차와디 다마르 가뇨차르지 디지보르시베스 다지단다 아 충분히 샤가오시다에 가보지 예버도 남아서 다지 가보지고 만다다 가타르지 다시 샤면 내토야면 단도 샤가위 다다 삼삼 계지적도 미가지 결혼하샤 가르소에 칼라가시오 카레스 and 샤 스페 칸드 텐드로 텐드로시도 야디 라나야 선 샤키 아닌 거로
So on that occasion, I also read the words of some of the great masters of the past, and Kagyu masters of the past, and I gave an explanation of them. Talking about this, as reasons for giving up. The reason for this is that giving up meat needs to be something that we're individually connected with. As Buddhists, of course, we have to talk about this in relation to the Buddha. As Kagyupas, we have to talk about it in relation to the great Kagyu masters in the past. And of course, since it was me who was speaking about it, it was something that has to also be connected with me. And so at that time, I also mentioned that it would help me have a long life. It would help me help my life and my vitality. Now, whether actually giving up meat has any benefit or any connection to my own life force and my own vitality, I don't know. But I thought that, well, maybe if I just say this, it'll be beneficial. And so I mentioned it, and I said, and I spoke about this. And at that time, I also talked about the great Kagyu masters of the past. Now, in the past, in Tibet, it was actually, there are very few vegetarians. There are very few vegetables. They're difficult to get. And so most people lived their lives subsisting entirely on animal products. And so that was a time when giving up meat was extremely difficult to do. And yet at that time, there were quite a few masters, Kagyu masters, who did give up meat and who practiced vegetarian and who emphasized this. This is especially especially the 8th Karmapa Mikyo Dorje, who spoke very, very forcefully about this issue. And he even said in one of his writings, if you eat meat, then you are not a Kagyu. So later, as I said this, later what people heard is that, I was saying, if you eat meat, you aren't a Kagyu. I was just reciting something. I was just repeating the words, repeating a citation from Mikyo Dorje. I wasn't saying it my own, but later everyone thought that these were my own words. And so I myself have given up meat. I am vegetarian. But when I look back upon my life, I don't see for myself that I've really been able to accomplish very much that's been meaningful, very much that's had a point. Most of the time I see that, I've wasted my life. I've spent it doing pointless things. But if someone said to me that I had to point out a single thing that I'd done that was meaningful, then I'd have to say that it's actually this giving up meat and being vegetarian that's given me the most satisfaction and makes me feel the most comfortable. Other than that, I can't think of anything else really that I could say. Actually, when I was little, though, I actually really liked meat. Actually, you can't say I just liked meat. I really loved meat. I really still like meat. These days, sometimes people ask me, what's my favorite food? And whenever one asks me what my favorite food, it's like I'm just about to, the word meat is about to slip right out of my mouth. But, I can't say that. If I say that I like meat, then there's the danger that tomorrow they're going to bring me a steak.
Ready, Yetilia, Mardi, Sanye, Sanye, de on the yard, yet, Tanaging young wash of a trouble the day, Shassan the on the yard. And the missing Azutelia, near Mara Shamizainza, and Ashuji. And go to Shassan to Jash, some of the Samsung Sagat in the Yundusane, near Kuzu Robache, and some of the shattering out. Trade you Santa di missing and Namtos gets your man. Cesar di Garson or Sana, near Carchingo or Sana, Marban Gargion Society, Unetneda, Marban Gargion Shadi, some tongue was needed Richard or Madadaji, Shatters Saganji, Samazan Matansi, Saganchi Shana, this Mandibaruchi. That church in the Tundruti sometime in as on the Genetaji Masamaruchi. Tundrutis or sometime in that Samazan Matansi Sajana, Dreamersuchi. And I is a coolest of a Nidima, which is sometimes done as some don't wear a children. That you be net, that is Susan on the name, Ning Tabane. 지금 교화동 거야지 내준시래 마도베 대지 미신다지기 지기 sembo wanyo chechi de chebina ante nimbuske ante idusane di gyunze dene yaji kashe samle nalo paji nege migi dyuniti shap migi riksa yamara sosaro joro ta shap tona namsa koro sayo sa ji lunglang ji chirsa ni ke chego mana da ga kare ni min zo di ta yi kontu shuna sinki anta ji mar ta gi kontu shuna je ko tangwa chidang mang bu shibshu are 라바르도 지 당연 뜻이야.
So I've become someone who's known as someone who says you should give up meat and be a vegetarian, but that doesn't mean that I think that everyone has to be that you can't be a meat eater. That everyone around me is not a meat eater. There are many friends and people I know who eat meat, and so in particular, even though I don't eat meat myself, I've sometimes helped. I encourage people to eat. Sometimes I go to a restaurant and I've even told people to order meat. It's so it's not like I'm going to get angry if you eat meat in my presence. I don't worry about it. I don't really think about it too much. I think that in terms of being vegetarian and giving up meat, it's something that we really need to consider for ourselves. If we don't think about it, then it's not right. If we just eat meat without any thought and without any consideration, then that's not right. We at least need to think about the animals. If we don't at least think about the animals and just go right ahead and eat the meat, then that somehow seems inappropriate or disrespectful, and that doesn't seem right. We also need to think about how it is about its relation to the environment. But it's important that if you're going to become vegetarian, that you change from your heart. That's the main thing. Because if you do it because you feel like someone is forcing you to do it, then there's no point in becoming vegetarian. It's something that you really have to think of from your heart.
Enda di chedo yan sha kala swar de yo gedo samza en de sha sa du san su sha ma se di de de nyam do ji kyu man de bri ji da di nyam do man de bri ji da di su ji bo di su do ji ku zu da ma ra che di du san da ji kala khabar ju do di ta ine khan da yang khan dar ka shu ye 간다양 딱 한달 아직디 고아 네 만호를 채워야지 딱 개좀시에 딱 간다디 대다 지 구유 순교기 아디 따지 차외 나로래야 응지 마르바 가정 차대 따지 가서 당과 채하기 딱 간다 남자로 지차디요 그래
And so I don't think that I'm not going to get angry just because I see someone eating meat. It's not a situation like that. But it's, as I said before, it's a choice that we can make. But in a family environment, sometimes it can be difficult. Like if your parents eat meat, and your spouse eats meat, and then sometimes you then have to cook for them, and you have to cook meat. Or if everyone else is eating meat and you have to have a special dish on the side that's different from anyone else, then sometimes that's also a bit difficult and kind of uncomfortable. In any case, it's as I said earlier, it's something that we need to think about. We have to have a proper and unmistaken understanding of that. And when we think about the things that we can do to protect the environment, then choosing to be vegetarian and giving up meat is one choice that we can make.
응애고마디 가르쳐다 지 쿠유단 제 튼생 야나서 지든지 되마래 마 공부하나로 다 저데 공부 차상 다 가시 지 겨안주 지 미상 김상 개바 진짜 라렌 따르투야로 진짜 용대 유아래 직전에 겨안주 디 타고래 다리난다 대라서보다 다 하나씩 간다 수수기 니지기 미지 나로래야 엔다 간다를 가수해 라렌다디 다 계속 차리 알아서 좀
So, in the past, I had prepared a text of the 108 things you can do for the environment, so different points for what you can do for the environment. And we published this, and it's primarily for monasteries, but among these 108 points, there are a few that you can also put into practice in your own households, and you can get a copy of this text. In any case, it is important that you put them into practice within your daily life. So next I think it would be good for us to do the question and answers. Now there are quite a few questions. So there are quite a few questions, and there's not time to answer them all. So first of all, we will have 10 questions, and then if there is time, we will have a few more. First, the question is, what are blessings? So what do we mean when we say blessings? That seems to be the question.
secret some daji shuji di hakwa me gyor ji gu gyor ji ma ji she de ya ji yore toa me gyor ji ma she de ya da ine chilabsa de ta chojin da dibur she mi na bana bugu ji ame gi tili ye che ame gi da ji tili ye ji bang le ye ji yana rangi zawa ye be khasa ji gi tila bang le ye ji bang 방가래 아이어를 또 심이나 가사 데려야지 뭐네지 secure somewhere 되지 년가배거든 언지 디기 손아로 치고 친거 알아 다데 지 지로 섭제 아래 지 뒤에 지로 섭제 버지 차대요 가라잖아 다지 오늘 미기 통화도 해요 말이 이번에 다디 쿠란기 진짜 다지 시진 세란다도 가사디 자와다 디기 지 친저디 시진저디 가사디 나와디 주도 거라 그 나와디 주도 거라 다른 신 배랑 안한다 차샤비네 참참 라마틴저 군주제도산 다부 자가 윤두산에 지sem디 sembabe 부수 더보다 지 가르에다지 삼로디 망고시지 가르에 축부를 잘해야지 달라마지 군주 자스두산에 마로 윤두산에 아니 sem디 거로 전신기 sem디지 신점으로 차려야지다 sem디지 semla gate de gawada dewar shebru chakra to syondi do jeda da de du ji de chilab sa du she da kona khasa shengi sijin di gi da chin ro de gi nawa gyur tu ya ji su su gi nawa gyur ro yu san da de chilab sa da pa ji de ji chare waras
So, blessings, when we think about them from one perspective, they're this
Ando yang
secret
kashe ki
thing
yang
that we
chi
can't
ngui
understand.
ni sui le me abra chi chilab se de lamsan chi energy ndo chi da kan da shu chen bo shu da ga lo je chu dong什么的 da lo ya 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 so chi de ji kono ro shu do de ji ai na sam chang da di 오늘 simple 다나 신기 지 가르레 다나 general 된지 마도 된지 마면서
So, from one perspective, we think of blessings as being something secret, something that you can't see, something invisible. But actually, I think maybe if we talk about blessings in a simple way, it's like you have a small child, a little baby, and that child is in the mother's lap or near someone who they know loves them, and then because of that person, the presence of that person, they feel secure and safe and loved and happy. That's blessings. That is actually a type of blessings. And the reason for that is even though there's nothing that you can actually see with your eyes, it's because of the power of that person, because of the charisma of that person, because of their love, then it's able to transform the child's perceptions. And so that's what blessings are. Like, for example, sometimes I go visit lamas, and when I'm on my way and when I first meet them, my mind might be feeling a little bit hectic, and I might have many thoughts, I might have disturbances or not peaceful in my mind. But when I leave and I go home, then my mind naturally feels more peaceful, more content. I feel joy and happiness in my mind. And so that's what it is. That's what blessings are like. So it's like because of the charisma or power of a different individual, it's something that's able to change your perceptions. That's what blessings are. It's not like what some people talk about today, something that doesn't really exist, some sort of energy field or some sort of force that affects you, like you're being affected by some electrical force. It's nothing, it really isn't anything other than something that's very simple and very general.
Ore, dadi di kisha de chuaji de chua de karasana ane ji nambe chue senen rando di en kale ji commercial doji dos.
So the question is whether Buddhism is becoming more commercial, becoming like a business. And so how should we approach this? What would we think about it? This is the question.
Dadi chua di karasla dadi di chua di nye sambriya ane di chua di da chochi ne di san zabling thole ya gangalo nambe chu jibo mare gangalo chong commercial chagare nambe jibo mare dadi di san du zugi kandaji dadi du rodan rushi gangalo chepsi ne 시저르디 총 삼다는 제도 안다지 다는 신기 매주시야 맹한데스네 총 삼다고 강글로 총 삼던 거래 제자 디기 전신기 에너지 남배기 대 나로 레비네 다 간다디 남버사디 간단 점린 디나로 예비 인상 안디고 슈겐도 걸리걸 태용으로 맞아지 남버사디 점린 신다지나 대려나 안다지 내랑 가래 맞아 저번에 니랑 내주사 슈겐데 호텔에 안 라바도 배나 맞아요 지 참점지 야지 나무 참물로 가서 추부차요 말해 제가 참점지 총도래야 삼다한데 뜻고 삼마다라는 지 가다 내당 망버지 토네 다디지 가서 람산지 가서 따이네 제단 디지 람산지 디규에레 슬랍토야지 단디 윤데레 슬랍토야지 람산지 시야테라 하고 싶자.
So this is a question, and with regard to this question, I think that from one perspective, it's actually not just Buddhism, it's actually everything in this world is becoming more commercial. Everything is becoming more related to business. It's like the way of the world. It's the way of our life these days. If you look at politics, our politics is becoming commercial. It's related to business. Even if you look at the medical profession, the hospitals have a business that they have to run a business. They have to think about commercialism and business. And so naturally, Buddhism, because Buddhism exists in this world, Buddhism is gradually being affected by this. So if Buddhism were off on some other planet, then it would be a different matter, but it isn't. Buddhism is on this planet, and because it's on this planet, it is therefore affected by the environment. Another thing we need to consider is that not all Buddhists are rich, and so sometimes they have no choice but to think about business. They have, so it's so no way to avoid it. However, it is difficult to say whether this is entirely positive or negative.
다이네 다 조조디네 다 가르래 그 principles of the 닝부데 말아버려 쳐야돼 데 개좀씩 차리야래 간다 닝부데 개체 가서야 다 간다 아주르 심비나 다 간다를 내가 사실을 돼 아주 따지 아주 다 아주 지금 남바를 한게 왜네 지체비네 따지 들어가지 내가 샤 가서 따지 가다지 가르치 제나 맞에는 최대 자체를 지그러 왔다 간다지 지단다 고촌의 삼단에 최대 자체를 마치 다 레리니를 마도 마치 최대 자체를 제제 최인부디 개체를 쓰가래 다이는 얘가 사실을 대통령한다 얘가 사실이 딩산 치계리아 따지 남바들이야 최적이 대묘의 토안에 많이 비체 다이는 남발을 때는 펜도 가르용도 케벤 가르용도 삼단인데서네 따지 곰자다 다니 마인드풀니스 다 주도 삼을로 펜도도 산지 되게도 삼을로 주도 안 쿠란 주기 프로젝트 소리 차지 안 되게도 바지 가서다 캡자로스당 기산 점링 돌이야 베는 구글은 서치 주사네 Buddhism sade searching nyon mindfulness ta meditation sade searching man tadi direction du santa jik bena Google da Facebook la so ba kan da ji company mang bu ching na lo le ya and ji meditation chi se de ba ta jin yon de ya re jesa kusu ki chue shao ge temyo to ni mai bi che ta keben to sam ta yin du san ta chen di keben to sam ta yin du san 다 남발을 때는 개변들이 도고도 라주산 인규 남배기 인데버지라 산이 고즈 프로젝트 차지 직체 유산다 되게 산이 더 가르쳐 괜찮아 싶지 요가는 시찬다 디자 요가데 오늘 전에 제비입니다 엔진 인진 사르데 이 너디 너럽기 야기 오늘 전에 얘기다지 류종 지보만데 지sem그 정도다 간다고지 새 토벽이 냠내를 차대요. 다이는 디산디 다 캔서를 차지. 주시오디요. 다디 캔서 차디 초진이 코란랑 게네면 다 치료네. 치료 미세 텔레야 대묘 상으로 만담치. 디디디 다 심주기 对象什么的 심주기 subject 좀 더지 다는 신기 켈라딘 가르게베인 거도 근데 subject 근데 상담 되게 내가 살을 통하라 就是商业的利益吧
Mainly, I think the most important point is that we don't lose the principles, we don't lose the essence of Buddhism. It's the essence of Buddhism that is most important. So I think that for those of us who are Buddhists, whatever we do, we understand that Buddhism is the most important. Everything that we do, we realize, we consider the Dharma to be important. So even if we're doing business, we still consider the Buddhism to be important and the essence of Buddhism to be important. So I don't see that as being the area where there's the greatest danger. But these days, especially abroad, there are many people who are taking interest in Buddhism not as a religion, but instead to see what benefit or what profit they can get from it. They're interested in meditation and in mindfulness, and they want to take that meditation and mindfulness and make their own product out of that and then sell that product. For example, if we this is becoming very common, and so now if we look at searches on Google, for example, we see that searches for Buddhism are decreasing, while searches for mindfulness and meditation are increasing. And even major companies such as Google and Facebook have created meditation rooms and meditation spaces within their campuses. And I think what they are interested in is not the Dharma. They're interested for what profit they can get, what benefit, what profit they can get in this lifetime. So what they're taking is Buddhism, and then they're trying to extract something from that and make it into a product, and it actually ends up being very strange. I think there's a danger that what's going to happen to Buddhism, that what will happen to Buddhism is what happened already to yoga. Yoga, in fact, is an ancient Indian tradition, and it's a tradition not just of physical exercises. It's also a way to achieve a very high level of practice within your mind. But now these days it's become a little strange and difficult. And so in this respect, it's a question that people from, that I think one aspect of the thing, that people from outside are taking interested, but not in Buddhism and Buddhism. Instead, they're approaching it as a research topic. They're seeing what about it is that they can be beneficial or profitable. And I think that this, in the end, is going to be more dangerous to Buddhism.
다디 주와디 가르사나 제바디 가상오마디 life and death sadun dewe debiresha.
This is a question in connection with life and death from the other day.
Ene sanang barulia ene ngegda chi kimsan alolia misumzi kanda nyenye nyenye mi sumzi and da chongdraki da nege nyenga dos jiktiene abadresha abadi ene kense naza phoche yes dene da dene momodi loge cheje and subudeba stames da dene pobode gujukoni yedebetjes.
So this questioner has 3 people who are close to them who are in danger of dying within the next year.
긴지 미답에 니들한테 하고 둘스 이내야 다지 수수익이 다지 제셈 도네 단단한 신기 나추고 도네 benefit 수수익이 아마 단단한 신기 김상기 너미 신달래야 다 간다 디톤에 다 고술이야 제시야 단단한 신 랍제야로다 습수 동아로 되지
And so the questioner understands, and they have 3 people in their lives who are facing death. The father has cancer, the grandmother is 84 and not in good health, and the grandfather is 92 years old. So this is someone who they understand appearance and death.
치와 미다바 세나다 미다바 규와 텔이야 동네 치아디 남균이지 정다 예데브르스인데 심비는 동네 치도야디 용거를 맞다 정다 자는 매비트리지는 람산데지 아직 제오선도 깔아가버스 인기를 삼정도스 다들 미세 라시문다 배낭 알아내디지 강에 채비는 알아내 샤샤샤야스만다 강에는 디
So this person understands impermanence and living, but is wondering how to explain this in a way that will be beneficial, in a way that it fits with Buddhism to their relatives. And His Holiness replies that I don't have much to say. with impermanence, with death and impermanence. If we, in order to face up to death and impermanence, then we first have to train in it. If we haven't really trained and contemplated in it, then it's difficult to immediately really face up to and accept death. It's just not something we can do. I don't have a lot to say about this right now, but if I can think of something to say, I will say it later.
다 내백이 나 데리 다디 좋아디 홍콩기 엔 첩시 가서다 네 가서디
This is a question about politics in Hong Kong.
다지 첩시다 안 지조 버룰이야 다지 편주지 전달을 해야디
And now there is a great rivalry between politicians and society in Hong Kong, and so please speak about this. So what can we do to promote harmony?
나디 내백이 다지 달로 진이 나로래야 다 홍콩이야 니주망으로 총송 다딩에 따데 지 선교 된대 토한다 니마 다와를 통데 니주주시샤 나 초진에다 홍콩 미디 지단다 초진에 통도 지금 홍콩 미디 상으로 초진에다 간다 오늘지 고란 상으로 초진다 도스지디도 가랑 왜네지 가라간 상으로지 도스지디 세란장도 지기 승구루에 되버지热诚什么的的日也되버지 승구루에 되버지的통로 다이네 대백이 뒤주 나눠라다 니주 망부로 충분해 다디 걸리지 뒤지 당분에 그런 지 야버지 되지 야버지 요아지 상쇼 요아요 알지 이제 삼로 단지 도체베 다이네 타마타마르 두산티 제단을 되게 도루도루 신지 다지 라마시버지 괜찮을지 잘도와 다딜랭아 심레르 디스예
So in the past couple of years, there have been many different situations that have occurred in Hong Kong, different events in Hong Kong, and I'm aware of these. I see the news, I hear about them every day in the news, I hear something about this. And one aspect of this is I think that the attitudes of people in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong people, is that they're all really respectful and they're caring for each other, they're respectful and caring of each other. But there have been several different events in recent past, and gradually, I think that originally the motivation has been good, wanted to change things in a positive direction. But in the end, the way things have been carried out, it's like things are degenerating or getting worse, and so it's a difficult situation.
常常在新闻上看到大陆人跟香港人打架。但是呢，过去的大概呢，他说的是米的生理啊，大概呢是他说的安全感才能让这什么的这头发贴住么往不下也不去些，那头发的贴住么的这眼白这个 negative 头发的这头发的贴住么往不下也不去，没什么的推着点么都去，像这个头发呢，大概呢是emotional charge， 但你这往不使用的多，那这个就是啥呢？你去，你说一个，像这个大概呢。 수수의 토바다 태숨당 emotional 수수 카데를 자체 안 간다지 수수의 외에 딱 간다 셈바 지카슈에 셈토 토네 안 간다지 디 칠로네 거뒤네 아주 3년 나로라다지 지 칠로네 지기 야고 제 연구를 삼바로 지 라와다야 지 도바를 제제든지 지금 토안에 rodi du sane and tadi namya kaduine di 타쳐야 매된 게 차디 아래 다 딩에 버도 친한 니가 도하는 다 실로네 근데 이제 다주 연구야 지래라 다 개시슈지 수수의 낭성 그 도하네 되려야지 딜링을 제시다지 도담을 채고하디 개좀 쉽지 차디 그래서 정도스 다 임비네 다 단도나 조데다 게 나랑 도스바지 지 가르에 선배 천왕 통의 셰비는 다 공공대 근데 도자를 star아지 연구 안에 섬을지 네 전에도 제사 조조대 로데버시 선배 데버시 대비나 도시다 용마를 섬을지 저는 도스 모노미
But the most important thing is that for we people, we have a lot of, in our minds, we have a lot of thoughts and worries and suspicions. And because of that, then our thoughts and our minds go in a more negative direction. Because of that, we're unable to relax our minds, and then we get very emotional, and then that makes more difficulties and more situations. So the most important thing is that we need to look. We actually need to look at our own worries and our suspicions actually as our own opponents, and we need to, within our own mind, we need to make them into our opponents. We're always looking outside. We're hoping that something outside, or hoping or fearing that something outside of ourselves will turn out well. Now, everything outside of ourselves has to be decided, but actually we need to really focus on both the inside and the internal and the external. The events will decide things on the externally, but what's most important is how we deal with our own minds and how we face with things in our own minds. But my feeling is, the feeling I have is that actually things are not going to turn out that badly in Hong Kong. I think you can relax, it'll turn out well. Things will not get that bad, and that's my aspiration, that things will not turn out bad in Hong Kong.
The
question is that after a death, is a question about organ donation of the internal organs after you pass away. And so it's often said that you have to donate organizations within 12 hours of death. And so is this in conflict with Buddhist teachings at all? And I think this is something that's related to the secret mantra explanations.
Zalung tile le nön ro do sa ki jis ke yo manwa da ine trin du sanem da zo simgel rale men ro simgel de dis je yimna an pasi khader jin ro ta ti chwa le sev kya to yar ka khabro do de yimne simge di tangbon ma shi khone simge yebin dis tamen ro sum.
And so this is a question that's really related with the secret mantra Vajrayana. At the time of death, or before the time of death, if we have that resolve and that motivation and bodhicitta, then I don't think it's a problem. Like the Bodhisattva gave his body to a tiger while he was still alive. There was no question for him of, is this going to harm my the channels, winds, and drops in my body? So it really depends upon our bodhicitta and our resolve. If we have that resolve, then I don't think there's going to be much difficulty to it. So it's a question of whether we have the resolve to give them. There's different types of divinations in both in Eastern and Western traditions. Some are reasonable and some are not reasonable, but when we think about these, You consider these. There's like so there's our karma, and it's like everything has been predetermined. So is that how it is? So is it something that can be changed by practicing virtue? So this seems to be the question.
Mojadi, near more some of the more gives. Among a penny on this sun, more jabreda. More jabre. More jam. Some more the Pembotus do. Some of Nadian Cassia, Tazu Chema Chevers. The Tizunus is Morris Jabsha son. Pavilion, that is easy and cortado, and Lelavstu. Tajade, Tingazuya, Peve, Timum, Samsung, Penang Azuka, Monam Colia Karzadi, the Uman, Solia, the Pesha Degor, Kunji Jagor. 다데 군지 잠마 접상 아도 손도 마부소사다 손도 띵 마부소 타잔참다 가시 자오르스 가시 자오마르스 다 타마르 두산에 엔다 모소르 직답야레 가 접선은 접시었다 마 접선은 다 접선은 자인스 마 접선 다 가르모고 가르차서나다 저금인스라 다들 비체네 저 참참 펜버스도 다 이네디 지게기 administration and the kids at the Yomaro, Moja the kids Yomaro, the Kaduna kids show. Takandar Chidangi Kashre, Ming Yun summer with Takandaji leg, quit Hansade, Juaton Dipshe, Narasamblia. Yina, Juaton said, Le Lavshi Yomare. That's all the me Shigalia, Mijiki Shigatelia, Kansad in Juatantuna. And 그게 레고 한데 요아땅 토로 다이네 가사든 요아땅 사야데 컨디치드 상황으로나 지그 넘주른 요아땅보다 지 가서 게임 잠으로 땅 아니 수부드 넘주르드 배 흘러 땅 되게 샤브지 그게 민지 요아땅 통마로 요아땅한테 가사데 지 시거다 삼동다 되게들이 요아땅 토나 안 가사든 조조야래 가사든 조조토나 and Casadi, Ming San Andando, Korangi Guatano, telling you are not good. Cesar teaches and then they catch him, some don't have the catch appreciation. Chitangi, Moja, Zigua, the San Law, that Chitan, Luchavina, that Koran. Chitangi, me the Tinting, Shimina, Nizu Chedaba, Nizu, young Casa Chedaba. 아니 주양 미세된데다 가사 미세된데 티마네 가라서 나 모장이라 티마네 드린 주산에 타지도 때 레기 그다사 당보도 처지 제샤버지 디직 근데 지금 아주 사무다만 시레 라버지 근데 저만 따디 시라게다지 레기 남샤르데 쉽자 시라여야 되지 배는 아주 데리지 거래 남식인 좋아서 남식인 준도사 다다다 남식 좋아 신세 라바디스 남식 원다디 칼라하르 조르스도 남식이 텐치 변迁 세상 남식 원다 담는 배 칼라하고 싶차대요 남식 원다 다지변에 사용을 원다 땅투요만 대간는 신기 간다 직보를 차대요 디 유준이 예배질이야 다든 데데 말해서 라서야 돼 깔아가고 싶지
So with divinations, I actually myself occasionally have done divinations. Like before I left Tibet, I did a divination, and occasionally doing a divination is actually beneficial. Sometimes there's a situation you just don't know which way to go, what to do, what or not, and you think about it. Then you do a divination, you believe in the divination, and you make a decision, and it makes it easier and more comfortable. This is like a particular Tibetan tradition. Like once in the Kaju Munlam, we were trying to decide whether we should distribute offerings to the Sangha in the middle of the puja or not. We had a lot of discussion about this, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion. Some people said we have to distribute it during the puja. Some said we shouldn't do it, and we went back and forth on it. In the end, we had a meeting and we did a mo. And we just said, if the mo says we should distribute it in the pujas, we'll distribute it in the pujas. If it says we'll do it, we won't do it, then we'll do whatever the divination says. And we did the divination in it, so we just followed that and no longer distribute that during the middle of the puja. So this is something that in modern Western administration, there's no talk of doing like this. You have to talk through everything and make the decision. But if you make the decision, follow the mo and then make the decision, then it's beneficial. But in terms of whether this is going to change your karmic destiny, I think it's possible, of course, that you can change your karmic destiny, but it's not all that easy to do that. Really, in order to change your karmic destiny, you have to change your own human character, the person's character. The individual changes, and then that affects their karmic destiny. But it's not so easy to change the individual. It's not like just changing the appearances, changing the way they speak, changing their external expressions of body and speech. It's actually really the individual has to change. You have to change your own character, and you change your attitudes. If you can change those, then the individual changes. And then once the individual changes in this way, I think there's some chance to actually change the karmic destiny, or the way things will work out for you karmically. And so I think that this is going to be important to understand. So in general, in terms of doing divinations and thinking about karma, there's many specific situations, specific individuals, and so whether it's reasonable or whether it's right to do them or not is a very difficult question to answer. And talking about our karmic destiny is something that's not at all easy to describe. The descriptions of karma and the presentations of karma in Buddhism are extremely complicated, and so it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen in the future. It's like with the weather and climate change. Because of the changes in the climate, then it's getting very difficult to predict what's going to happen with the weather. They can't even predict, and there's no way that anyone can predict an earthquake anymore. So it's getting more and more difficult to predict. And it's similar with our karmic destiny.
Homosexual this
is a question about homosexuality. The questioner's child is a homosexual, and because of this, it's giving some difficulties in the family. So please speak about this.
지당기가 주대지 추루 망부지 토안에 데려야다 각버를 용디 가래 다 남배 토안에 셰비나 퍼지 다 공각버를 용디래 다 임비네야 하나다지 가수에 예고마다지 답대버를 지셔야 돼 아는데래 가수에다 에너지 간다 지 변하다 자가나 셰빈 통신이나 이신이나 다 다나시 간다 지다 센튜버의 미팅버 가르이미냐 냠도 돼야디 지금은 지 조다지 제와 지금은 지 심플 서머라 다 지금은 되게 纯净的什么的，这几他呢，在外管念不到原因呢，那他个几个人是，他的新闻呢是搞出来， ngazu sangmolo simgu tege yore kora ngoy nizu twale ngazu sangmoji semlia simgu teche ngazu sangmolo daji nizu로 dinje 망고 동거를 다지 제외 거는 냠도야 되주산다 가다 지 이신 통신 가래 연비네야 다 디지 지원에 장 상호 심구 태제 상面거나人心기 다지 전황 상부를 주용한디 아래 근데 이 주산 남아 상계 외면의 셰비 연비네야 다지 자와 사들이야 고 가주에 딜량 외련 차를 지다 대 갑조 차를 지버지래 삼정도 다 의미네야 지 간사 수르지 의미네야 다 이신 통신 가래 의미네야 냠도 대야디 양지 desire 르지 셴바 조르지 착신으로 조르지 근데 토하는 의미는 다 마치 초진디 셴바 착신 조르지 의미는 이 균정 부지 내 두고 말해 차고의 셴바 균정 부지 내 두고 말해 다 그러지 근데 초하디 템포를用말로 고가라서 차과의 셴바 사디 emotional 사디 고 람상람상 지 교원 줘야지 tempo me ci chadi yore gyuru ne to marla and this dilya and takandaji kawajar takarju nambe ngene shebine takandaji chasin pang waruji do shege wi industane di gyunzen tone nge samlya ta di chojin samdawina and jingye ta konshuna si chulu mabuji gawayon de nambe tone da ji kangeruji 용거를 삼정은 또 초진이 신들이 초진이 신나 다들 또 내버려지래 내가 건도 쉬우는 신 삼 초진 담비는 지구지구를 해 삼가나도 스팅이
So I've spoken about this a few times, and in general, many religions prohibit homosexuality, and Buddhism, if you look at it, it probably also does prohibit it. But if we really want to speak about it simply, then whether people are heterosexual or whether they're homosexual or whatever they are, if there's love, then it's simple. If they live together and there's love and affection, then there's no problem with that. This is something continuous. If you meet someone, they really move your mind, and you can see them, and you can live together with love and affection, and naturally, then there's nothing wrong with that. There's no problem, and it really doesn't matter whether it's homosexual, heterosexual, or what. And so, as Buddhists, what's important is that we encourage and we support people to be loving and affectionate. But when we look at it on an individual level, whether you're homosexual or heterosexual, often when we get together, people get together out of a desire, lust, and attachment. And so if they're primarily getting together out of lust and attachment, then that can't last very long. It's just not a stable feeling. Lust and attachment are not stable feelings, and they do not last very long. So basing a relationship on that is very problematic. So in general in Buddhism, we say that lust and attachment need to be limited. So in one way of looking at this, just like many other religions that prohibit homosexuality, but it's also difficult in Buddhism. But another way of looking at it, it's actually very simple, and if there's love and affection, I think it's fine. And so that's my opinion.
The final question, the
last question is.
How do
we prepare for death while we are still alive?
So
how do we prepare for death while we are alive? This is the question. So we have to prepare while we're alive. Once we're dead, we can't prepare anymore.
선배 내가올이야. 간다징아 저기 다들 처리 지나면 막 무시해요 알아요. 초치니 가르스나 수수지 니마치디 미스지 임을 삼당하지. 쇼벨라 야란두스타네 아니지 아메 코베나마 게브르지 삼당. 고모냐 많이 해주스타네 엔지 매기 타만으로지 녀제 매기 타마성으로 다지 녀사 타마들이야 녀제 and she do you ever dili chi samlo tangche dili chewi this nyangpendo shungres.
So there are many different ways that we can prepare for death while we're still alive, but one of the best is if you think of each day as being an entire lifetime. So when you wake up in the morning, that's like being born from your mother's womb. Then when you go to bed in the evening, then you think to yourself that you're lying on your deathbed and that you will die. And so if you practice this, I think it will help prepare. It's very beneficial for preparing for death.
다는 치외 넘버 고면 치외 넘버 고면 사다 가라서 다지 친족예배 다지 수수지 타만달래 친족예배 삼단체 다간다지 신조의 내가기 내다로 찾아로 삼단 안다 디디지 근데 치외 넘버 수수 친족의 거 디거 니주다 에너지 수배团 넘주 근데요 니주나 근데요 다 진짜 검세 진짜团에 energy
Another meditation is to meditate upon the way, the aspects or the form, the way that you'll die. So you think about what it'll be like when you die, what the situation will be, what the changes are, and how these are. So you think about the different ways you can die and what will happen at the time of death, the changes that occur in your body. And meditating on this is one way to meditate on this. But these days, some people, when they think about dying, so these days there are people who go off and they'll go get into a coffin at night and then spend a night in a coffin. They close the coffin. They'll spend a night in the coffin. So there are some people who do this these days.
ending 다들 치워서야돼 거두이네 가지고 긴지 튜냐마르 용구에 빈두산 니마 딱바르 시온데야 내다르지 닌데 셴눔나시 니마 샤 니마 누 쳔루예바나 신기 간다 아주기 미진나로르 니마 딱바르 총데야 내주지 뭐지 모트베 토네 간다 치워서야들이야 아주 지고 치용 방과 치워려야 다지 디버첸 주 수수기 셈 디버첸
In any case, it's like I've mentioned before, death is something, it's not the ending. Actually, death is like birth and death are always together. They're always happening together. It's something that happens for us on a daily business. It's like the sun rising and setting. It's in every single day we have birth and death. And so if we recognize this, then we can decrease our fear of death. And so then the better acquainted we become with death, then the less fear we'll have. So it's very beneficial.